Hey, everybody. I'm here with a dirt trail running podcast, Coffee with Coaches. And today you notice I'm here by myself. Coach Reese has left me. He's off on vacation this week. So lucky enough, I got Liesle, our physical therapist, is here with us today to join us and talk to us about some cool things. So I'm excited to get started. So again, I'm Coach Loretta here with Liesle Elsey. Liesle, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background and experience.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a physical therapist. I have been practicing for almost, I have to do the math now. Isn't that terrible when you can't remember? Over a decade. Let's do that. But so of course, like everybody has a story by why they want to be a physical therapist. And I ran in high school, I ran in college, and I was injured. And, they said, don't run. And so telling a runner not to run is kind of ridiculous. And so going into PT school, I was like, no, I'm going to solve this. Like all runners can run, you can run forever. So graduating from PT school, took a bazillion courses in running stuff. And then I had kids and that kind of put running on the side and things were a lot different. So then I took a dive into pelvic health. And so that's a whole nother story.
Story for another day.
Yeah, another day, right? And so running and pelvic health and physical therapy is all my jam. So yeah, that's
Nice.
yeah.
Nice. Well,
There we are.
it's good to have you on here. And I'm lucky enough to also have Liesle as my physical therapist, who I started with pelvic floor health, and we've moved on from there. And I'm doing a lot of work on the injury that I've been working through. So I'm excited to share her with our community because she's a wealth of knowledge. So Liesle, we talk all the time when I'm in PT. I probably exhaust her because I'm asking her questions all the time, but I have learned so much knowledge. So let's talk a little bit about, and this is something I've been working on, a lot too, is strength training and mobility. They kind of all go hand in hand, making a runner, hopefully to prevent injury or to stay healthy as a runner. So where do you want to start? Mobility, strength training?
Mobility. So it's always mobility first, because you want to make sure that all of your joints can move before you're adding strength to them. So depending on the task that you want to do, in this case, we're talking about running, we want to make sure that all of our joints have the mobility that they need to be able to perform. We're talking about trail stuff. We have to consider terrain that we're running on. So our foot has to be able to adapt. And then hills, we need to have that mobility as well. So yeah, always mobility before stability and strength is my opinion.
So what kind of mobility do you suggest for runners?
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I think as in general is you can do a self-assessment to see where is it that you're most limited. And I typically work from, center down, but if you're by yourself, you can do ground up. So for instance, squatting down to the ground, can you in fact squat all the way down to the ground so that your heel stays on the ground and that your butt is touching your heels? And for some people, they'll say, oh, nope, can't do it. My heels are popping up. So we know that there isn't that ankle mobility that they need. So that's like a quick screen to see, can you in fact do that? And then looking kind of up, it's like, well, then you can go into on a step and can you do like a lunge forward? And again, can you get that hip behind you and that heel down? And so in the running run, we talk about triple extension. We want to make sure that we can go into plantar flexion. So pointing your foot, toeing off, our knee can be straight and our hip can be extended. And again, do we have that mobility? And sometimes that's an easy yes. And other times it's like, no. So that's a quick way you can assess quickly where you're at. And we've done, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so go ahead.
I was going to say, so we've done, so I was influenced at a younger age with Gray Institute and the 3D mapping, which is something that you and I have worked on. And it's a great way to warm up functionally to get our foot, our ankle, our knee, our hip, our pelvis, our spine, all doing what it needs to do. So that's probably one of my favorite ones. And I'm sure you can agree to that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I actually use that with a lot of my athletes as well, because I found such it's so great. And I was also looking up, I believe Patrick Mahomes is
He
also
does.
using it, great football player is doing the same thing. So yeah, which is
Yeah.
cool.
And so with the Great Institute, they have the gift program. And so his trainer is a gift graduate. So that's why Patrick Mahomes, if you see him on the sideline doing like these funky motions and twisty motions, it's those maps and modification. And so, yeah, which is cool to see. I had a therapist send me a picture. This was last year, right before the Super Bowl, of him warming up on the sideline.
Oh, that's so cool. I need to see that. If you have it, still send it my
Yeah,
way.
I saw. Yeah, it's like, woohoo! Like, look at this. We're like top elite athletes.
That's right. And it's kind of awkward, goofy movements. So it'd be nice to see that, this awesome football player is also doing what we're doing. So
Yeah. So yeah, maps are so I sipped that water when I was in undergrad, and I'm a believer.
yep, absolutely. Me too. It's been helpful definitely in my training routine as well. So yeah.
Yeah. So well, and then what other things have you found that have been helpful in like your journey that kind of we've worked through for like mobility stuff?
Okay. So definitely, I think if you remember, well, when I first started seeing you for pelvic floor therapy, I had just come off a 100-mile race, I think. So, I was not moving very well, and my mobility was very bad at that point. But
Yeah.
what I've noticed is it's improved tremendously since I've been working with you. I think I even pointed it out to you the other day, like, look how much better I can squat. And I was thinking about a year ago or so, there was this thing going around the internet, the tying your shoe test, where you stand on one foot and you put a shoe on, and then you switch and you put another shoe on, just balancing on one foot and not touching anything. And I remember it being somewhat challenging back then. And I thought, why is this so hard for me? I shouldn't be this uncoordinated or have this poor of, balance. And now I'm like, I haven't tried that test in a while, but I know I would do really well at it because my balance on each foot is so much better. And I tried that yesterday. I'm like, wow, I can stand so well like this. And so I think all of those things show me that it's, I'm on one foot when I'm running all the time, so that's super helpful for me. And I also think the mobility that you've given me has helped me, as I'll admit it, I'm an aging athlete, right? So I feel like as we age, our balance mobility declines if we don't do something about it, right?
100%.
So I recently went on a hiking in Colorado, and I felt so much more stable climbing the mountain trails and descending through having better mobility and balance, I think. So I think that's been a big takeaway from me. Like I said, when I came back, I still need to work on that decline, still a little bit shaky on going down, but maybe that's just mental than physical.
Oh, but some of it, like, so we brought up a good point too, as far as like the stability. So if we give, as a physical therapist, sometimes like, ooh, that's stiff, but then we're like, okay, yay, that moves better, but we don't necessarily tell it to be more stable or stronger. And
Right.
so we do have to have the stability. And so stability goes to the balance and support, and not necessarily like strength and power, but like the stability, like I can balance. And I think I think when we go back to when we first had met, I remember saying, okay, can you stand on one foot? And you're like, and this is what, not just you, but all my runners that I see are like, oh, I have terrible balance. It's like, no, you can't have terrible balance. You spend your world in one limb. You have to have good balance. But that's always what comes out first thing is like, oh, I have terrible balance, and I'm not flexible. So they do go hand in hand. But having that stability is huge. And that goes from having foot intrinsics. And we've talked about footwear. Like that's probably one of the things that we like, we go on tangents on footwear, which that can impact your stability. And if you don't have the mobility, then you can change your footwear to kind of accommodate for the lack of the stability or the mobility that you don't have, which that could probably be like a whole nother tangent.
For sure. I think I've tried from ultras to hokas, showing you and trying to see like what is the best fit for me. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely another podcast, but really good information to think about as a runner, as we're picking out, because there's so many choices out there. And, there's certain ones that are really popular, but are they right for you? So I think working with you has really helped me kind of hone in. Of course, I still have my binkies and I'm having a hard time changing, but
Well, but now you won't have an option because they don't have it anymore.
exactly.
So you need to find a new company. But yeah, so I mean, and it's always fascinating because from a shoe industry standpoint, it's like it keeps evolving. So it was like all this cushion to now we're going to like more minimal, and now even like the carbon fiber, like to have, so it's fascinating. But when you think about it, so ages ago when Born to Run came out, right, that was like a barefoot like trend, and it'll be curious if that comes back again. Right. But but thinking about all of that, like if you are running barefoot, you have to have the mobility through the foot and ankle, and you have to have the strength, especially through that calf. So kind of like transitioning into strength stuff is, making sure that you have calf strength to be able to shock absorb, because you don't have a shoe to have that cushion to help give some of that like absorption. It's going to be all of your muscles, and if the muscles aren't going to do it, it's going to go to joints, and then the joints are going to be sad, and that's where you get the breakdown and arthritis and blah 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 blah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So so kind of a little bit about mobility. How often do you recommend doing, like, let's say the 3D mapping?
Yeah, so I think, and I'll customize as an aging athlete, right? Getting back into running, I have to do some type of warm up. So doing the mapping before your run, just to prime the tissue, is not a bad idea, because instead of having the first like mile, 2 mile, like getting into it, you can spend the first mile, 2 miles still having quality movement instead of like crap run.
Yep.
So I think that that's really important to do it, some of it, even if it's just like 5 motions. So even going into do like Frankenstein's or knee hugs, or I mean, there's so many different ones out there, but I think before activity, it's a great thing, especially as we continue to age, is we need a warm up. We need that mobility stuff before we hit the ground.
Sure. And that now that you bring up Frankenstein's, I remember when I first started those as well, I really couldn't get my legs up that high. And now I can show you. I mean, I would show you here, but I'm not showing get my legs that high into the picture. But I have to show you. I mean, I can really get my legs up now. And I'm like, wow, this is something I couldn't do before. Maybe they would come up part way, but now, I reach my arms out and I can touch on each side. And I also love doing the like a walking pigeon pose has been really helpful in opening my hips up, I think, before.
Yeah. And I mean, it's also funny. So my husband is a cross country coach, and so we talk about things, and he jokes around. He says, "Wow, look at my hamstring flexibility." And I said, "Oh boy." So, but the one thing to note with doing like Frankenstein's is, what does your hamstring flexibility look like? Because when we talk about overall stability, like from a pelvic position, is that if our hamstrings are tight, they're going to pull our pelvis into this tilted position, and that doesn't give us optimal like mechanics to cover ground efficiently. And so that's one of those other things that if when you watch somebody with like a tuck butt running, then they don't really have the power to extend their hip. They don't, like, their glute is just like a dumb butt. So they'll find other ways to move. But yeah, so hamstring flexibility, like when you do a Frankenstein, it's like, okay, are your hamstrings really that bad? And then now are you tucking under a bit? And now your glute doesn't work. And we need like buns of steel to be able to cover ground, right? So it's fun. Yeah. So
I think that's a really good transition into strength. Buns of steel. I think I've got them now. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
So, I'll just talk a little bit about my background in strength training is several years back, I was doing CrossFit, and I was teaching CrossFit strength, and I was very, very strong. I was doing a lot of strength training, and then, I kind of life got busy, and I just started doing more running. Sometimes you have to make a choice, as we're busy working and, doing all the things that we do as a human besides outside of running. you have so much time in the day, and I focus more on running and kind of backed away from the strength training. Well, over the last year, I've really committed to a lot more strength training. Working with Liesle has really encouraged me to do that. And I can tell I'm a lot stronger runner, like I can go for long, long runs and my legs don't get tired. I feel strong the whole time. And so I'm excited to talk about this topic with you, because I think as runners, we don't always think about how important strength training is. And so I also feel like, for me, I have the privilege of having some of the equipment in my house, so it makes it super easy for me, and it's not super time consuming, so I can step in and do strength pretty quickly. So I've learned that it's really not time consuming for me. I can blend this in pretty easy into my workout. But let's talk about strength, and like, what kinds of things do you recommend athletes to do, maybe if they're new to strength, or even talking about the ones that have been doing strength for a while?
Yeah. So, the first one obviously is squats, right? So so I have 4 kids. And so I don't know, did you see that post I put on Instagram when I was squatting the kids?
I don't
So,
think you did.
so my youngest is 3, and so she's 25 pounds, and the oldest is 9, and he's 65 pounds. And so I'm trying to juggle being mom. So I'm like, okay, we'll squat. Okay, piggyback ride. And so we were doing squats. So that's how, like, if you don't have, like you were saying, like, don't have stuff in the house, that like weight system, like you have stuff in the house that you can always use as weights. So squats are probably my favorite thing. And then we think about just like strength, doing like a step up. So we're trying to get like that glute engaged to be able to push up. So running, if you're doing any type of like hill stuff, right? You have to have the ability to get up that hill, and you want to be able to like power up. And then even when we're thinking about squatting positions, we can think about, and this is what we talked about with Sammy, was making sure that you can go like knees over your toes to train that quad and that capacity for downhill running. So there's like that component as well. And then, deadlift is good for like core stability, as well as we're getting hamstrings and glutes on board. And then, well, if we go, and then we chat about this a little bit, like the plyometric stuff is kind of, you need to have that strength before you have like that power. So starting with a strength program, and it can be your squats, your deadlifts, your lunges, that can be helpful. And then, calf strength, duh, calf and soleus strength. So, this is what I've done to help myself be a bit more accountable, is I'll brush my teeth and I'll do my heel raises.
Oh, that's good. Just put it into your daily routine. I like that.
Yeah, because you're going to have to brush your teeth for at least, 2 minutes. So
twice a day.
yeah. So, and we think about, I think there was a recent article that said, the standard should be 28 single leg heel raises, is like, that's the gold standard for strength. When I graduated a while ago, it was 20 on, that was the gold standard. So they've upped it, which is probably a good thing, because think about like doing a 24-hour race. How many times is that calf pushing off the ground?
Right.
It's not 20 times.
That's a fun fact, because Liesle questioned me on that. She's been torturing me with this, with some jump roping and doing heel raises, and
BFR.
Yeah, and BFR, blood flow restriction therapy. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It's intense. But so I started doing some jump roping, and I asked Liesle, like, how many should I do? And she's like, think about how many times, during your 24-hour race that you're taking a step. So I looked up my data. It came to like 190,000 in a 100-mile race. And then I decided to take it a step further, and I looked at last year's steps, and I had over 6 million. So I decided to, like, okay, Liesle, look what you have to deal with. You're dealing with this train wreck right here.
But it's funny when we put into perspective, like from a functional standpoint, is doing our 20 is like great, but the fact of the matter is, like, if we want to be efficient runners, we really have to put in a little bit more work to make it so that covering the ground is easy peasy. We had talked about how heavy should we be lifting, right?
Yes, yes. That's always a
So
question. Because
yeah,
I think I see a lot of athletes like, oh yeah, I strength train. And then I find out it's like 5, maybe 10 pounds. And then I'm
yeah,
like, okay, okay.
no. And so that's, I mean, the beginning of this year, I'd taken a course, and it was more CrossFit lifting, because I haven't lifted in like 15 years. I mean, it was like that was when I was in college, and it was required. And even then, I still didn't know what I was doing. Um, and it was just like, well, you have to be able to deadlift. I mean, if you can deadlift your body weight or more, squat 2 times your weight, like that's just going to make you a more efficient runner. And I was like, well, that seems insane. I was like, well, let's see how much I can actually squat. And I was like, okay, like 45 pounds, I was like below parallel. I'm like, okay, oh, why was that so hard? But we have to, when we run, and we were talking about this earlier, is that single limb is getting 2 to 3 times the amount of weight through that single limb. So if we're doing strength training, we definitely need to load it up. And then the question becomes, do we go to a full like deep squat, or do we go into the range that we use for running, which obviously is not a deep squat? And so, right, I think it depends on who you talk to see, which is better, training specificity or strength. And I think it has to be a beautiful balance of both things. So that's always like, right, another debate that has to be had.
Right. But good information. I mean, it's something, as my focus is running, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, like, how heavy do I have to go? Like I said, back in the day when I was doing a lot of CrossFit, I was deadlifting double my body weight, but that was my goal, right? And now
Yeah.
my goal is more running. So I was a little bit like torn, but, thinking about that and talking about, squats and, doing heavier, because it does make sense. We're putting that weight on one leg or the other all the time. So we need to have that strength. And I think, that's one of the things I love is back squat, deadlift, and push press. I love those 3 movements. And so I've been really dedicated to those, as well as a lot of single leg strength, like what you were talking about, single leg step ups, single leg squats. I mean, I've improved tremendously on single leg squats. And again, I think I've been tortured on the blood flow restriction therapy and single leg squats, but all of those things, even though I have been recovering from somewhat of I guess we'll call it an injury over the year, I still can see the difference in my running. It just has made it easier. I just feel like the effort is less because I am stronger overall from doing those movements.
And I
Plus,
think
again, as an aging athlete, especially women in perimenopause or menopause, lifting heavy is so important, right?
her bones.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's one of the things, again, like we both can attest, like we're both women who are going to have hormonal changes kind of going like this. But it's also interesting too, because when we talk about injuries, is the question becomes, do we have, if we're strong enough, then can we adapt? And now the tissue irritability, our recovery time is a bit faster because we have that strength, like as a foundation. And so it's like, well, I was sore. It's kind of like, okay, well, how long did it take to recover? It's like, oh, I was fine the next morning. It's like, okay, go for another run.
Right.
Yep, go ahead. Or if it's like, no, it still bothers them. It's like, oh, darn it. Okay, what are we missing? Like, so trying to figure out, what is it that is still that aggravating factor.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's things that
Yeah.
we ponder at night.
Yes, we do. So you've talked about mobility and, nice if we can incorporate it on a daily basis before a run. Not necessarily mandatory, if you do it a few times a week, it's going to help you, but it's going to be even better if you could do it every time. And it doesn't take very long, right? And then strength training, if we're looking at, let's say, heavy strength, how I, as a coach, like to kind of pair it with the training cycle. And so, it goes along with where you are according to where your race goals may be.
Sure.
So usually for me, if I'm programming for an athlete, I'm going to have that heavy strength further out from a race where we're really going heavy. And then as we're getting into that more, bigger volume, more endurance piece, we may be focusing a little bit more on more endurance strength versus that, you know, the heavier strength. So
Right.
when we're talking about heavy strength, how many times a week do you suggest that?
Yeah. So, I mean, right. It depends on how far you're running and what you want to do. So, I mean, I
Yep.
think 2 times a week is kind of lovely because then you could have your stability stuff on those opposite days. So, stability being your core stability, and making sure that you have that foundation as well. So, I think you can kind of pair them, and then thinking about like, well, where's your workout in there, or is it just, you know, mileage building on to like, you know, your nice foundation. So
Right.
and that's the other thing is like, as you are approaching a race, that's one of the beautiful things about blood flow restriction is that you can still maximize strength gains without loading up. And
Yeah.
so we were on a webinar together, and which was so fun because we were just chatting back and forth.
I was thinking it's a good thing we weren't in class together at some point because we would have gotten in trouble for talking, but luckily we could do it in the keyboards.
Yeah. All right. Well, so yeah, just passing a note back and forth.
Yes, yes.
But I mean, that was just a cool thing to see, like, just to know, like, yeah, okay, we can do something like BFR as we're approaching a race to still maximize strength because we are going to need that when we're running at our like optimal pace and trying to be as efficient as possible. So that's also a nice like adjunct. And then also if we're injured too, BFR can be helpful in that aspect because that tissue needs time to heal. And you know, there's that recovery component that our body needs time to recover. So making sure that if we do need recovery, but we can still load the tissue to say, hey, listen, like, I understand you're not feeling well, but let's keep moving, please.
Right, right. Yeah, maybe next time I'm in the clinic in another week or so, we'll do a video of me doing blood flow restriction so people can see, and I'll have proof of the torture as well, but people can see what it is and what it's about. But no, it's actually, I think it's, you know, helpful. So I've appreciated being able to do that and try different things to try to help me get stronger and to help me get past my injury so that I'm, you know, able to run more efficiently. But one question I have is when we're thinking about heavy strength, do you have a recommendation on like how many sets and how many reps when we're looking at that piece?
Yeah, and that's, I always have to like reference my chart because when we think about, we want to build like muscle size, we want to do like the shorter, like, or fewer sets and reps. So like 3 to 8. And then if we're thinking about endurance, then we can say, okay, like, well, or if we're doing strength, like, okay, well, maybe like 8 to 12, and then endurance is like 13 to 30 or some such nonsense. I mean, and there's literature out there that gives you a bit more specific numbers.
Yep.
But you know, we think about when somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do a squat and I can easily pound out 40 of them or 30 of them in one pop. That's not really strength training. That's more endurance training, which again, that's not bad, but if we're trying to get stronger, you're gonna have to load it up a bit more. If you can do 40 at a pop. And as physical therapists, we underload more often than not. And we need to get better at that because I live on a well, so we have to have softener or salt to put in our softener. And those bags are 40 pounds, right? They're really heavy and I got to carry them downstairs. So we think about just from a functional standpoint, it's like, I need to be able to easily lift 40 pounds to take care of my house. And that's just for functional daily things. But like, if I want to run, I better be able to easily move like my body weight across the ground for several minutes. So, right, it's the concept of loading becomes important.
Right,
Does it
right. And I
answer the
think so. I
question?
think sometimes I mean, I want, you know, the way I advise my athletes and, you know, you can kind of chime in here, but
Mhm.
I want them to first know the movements, and be comfortable and using good mechanics before we start to load, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of the progression is kind of using body weight and then you can move up from there, you know, slowly. But I feel like people, that a lot of the people I work with get a little anxious when it's starting to get a little bit heavier because they're not comfortable and not used to doing some heavier weight. I often will suggest like, maybe find a gym, find somebody that can watch you, in person to be able to look at your movements as far as doing heavy strength. But that's also something we'll talk about in a few minutes. Liesle we're lucky enough to have her as our virtual physical therapist. And we're going to talk a little bit about what that is and what's, the consultation looks like. But, those are things, that I like is that people are doing things the right way. So they're not setting themselves up for injury. When you were thinking about squatting, I'm always really concerned because I don't want people to not be squatting in good form. Then that can contribute and have other issues that build up.
One of the things because we all have smart devices, and so we all have smart devices. So you can take your smartphone, your tablet, whatever it is, you can flip it around and you can watch yourself in live time, or you can record yourself and play it back and be like, oh shoot, like, yeah, that doesn't look good. So those are things that if you don't have access to a gym that you can always do and see like, oh yeah, okay, that doesn't look that bad. I can do this, and give yourself a boost. Or shoot, I need somebody to really watch me so
yes.
I don't hurt myself.
Yes. And I think also, if you have access to a mirror is nice to be able to do a spot check, now and then too. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another thing we mentioned, but we didn't really kind of go into much, but core strength. Do you have any favorites for core strength?
Yes. Okay. So my favorite core strengths, I have like the 4 B's that are, so breathing. So a nice deep breath. So making sure, and this goes into the pelvic health realm, diaphragm, pelvic floor connected. So we take a nice deep breath in, pelvic floor is going to lengthen. As we breathe out, pelvic floor should come back up. So we need to make sure there's that coordination, because if there isn't, as we're running, we might be leaking or we might feel pressure or pain. So deep breathing. So breathing is my first core exercise. Bridges, because we need to have that glute strength to help give stability on the backside. Bird dogs, which is
my new favorite.
Yeah. So, and then we've modified. Yeah, you're a bird dog. I love it. So bird dog, if you're not familiar, it's on hands and knees. And as one arm goes up, the opposite leg goes back. And so maintaining that like cross coordination. And then the fourth one are bear planks. Because I think I was doing a video early on postpartum and they put me in a bear plank and I was like, oh my God, like I can't do this. I was like, new favorite exercise. So to make it easier for my patients, I'm like, the 4 B's: breathing, bird dog, bridges, bear planks. So they're my top 4, but there's a bazillion more that I do like, but for easy ways to remember, 4 B's.
Nice. And the thing about what I really like about different kinds of things that you're talking about is we can modify them. And we can build and make them more challenging as we get stronger too, right? So like the bird dog, that's my favorite thing right now. And you can do that without weight, right?
Yeah.
You can do it without weight. And we've added, weight for me. And now I've recently added doing them banded, so I'm banded and I have weight, so there's different ways to make it more challenging as you get stronger as well. So, and I like that.
And there's always a way to progress. And even if it's too hard, we can modify it. And so still like the coordination becomes still super important. And again, we talk about the realm of pelvic health, and we've gone through this a bazillion times, but in order to have our appendages to be able to move easier, we really need to have that nice, stable pelvis. When we don't have that, then something breaks down, and that's where we can have our hip pain, our back pain. We can have leaking, we can have pressure. So if we can minimize that stuff with just some love to that pelvic region, we're in good shape.
Nice. So I think we've, kind of covered the topics of mobility and strength. We could go on, I know, all day. And I do want to share like kind of a special surprise that I've been working on and I'm talking to Liesle about a little bit is be looking for some videos that are going to be coming out of perhaps the two of us doing some of the strength, mobility, plyometrics. If you have something that you feel is a good workout tool, send me a message. Maybe we can include that as well. But we want to have a resource library for Ornery Mule Coaching on our YouTube channel. So that should be coming in the near future, where we start putting together, some things that will be helpful for our community as well. So, kind of panning off of that, I want to talk a little bit about recently Liesle joined us with doing physical therapy consultation virtually through Ornery Mule Coaching. And she also has a new business that she's starting, a gait core therapy, which she does travel PT, which is really cool too, where she has even met me at the trailhead at a local metro park and done some dry needling. And we had a very long line of patients lined up of what are they, sandhill cranes?
Cranes.
Yeah, a line of sandhill cranes eyeing me as I'm getting dry needled. But it's really a cool opportunity too. So Liesle, let's say we have an athlete that comes, I have referred some athletes to you that, I feel like they could benefit from some physical therapy. Some people do not have a lot of opportunity for physical therapists around them, or a physical therapist that have the knowledge that Liesle brings to us. She has some specialty with running and also pelvic floor. So I have a lot of athletes that can benefit from that, right? So when I suggest that they come to you, can you kind of talk through like the process of what they do when they initially come to you, and kind of talk about that a little?
So, filling out a history so I can review all of that beforehand, because for our runners, right, most of them have been running most of their life. So we have to know their injuries and like, where are they in their training cycle? Then we have the opportunity to do, because it is a live consultation, that we can do a movement screen. Like, okay, I can watch you. Where is it that you break down? Then we have the ability to look at some of that stability stuff that we talked about. Because of COVID, right? COVID taught us to be able to do virtual things like this. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to really refine my skills of watching through a video to see what was going on. But then the other cool thing is using the resources that you have at home, because like Loretta said, not all of us have a gym in our basement or in our back room. So finding ways that you can still be compliant to doing your exercises, and that it also makes sense for you. Because I think one of the harder things, and I had shared earlier on, like, I had gone to physical therapy when I was younger. They told me not to run. It was like, okay. And so making sure that, like, okay, yeah, I get why I need to do that. And so we're all on the same page so we can achieve the same goal, which is to be able to keep running, to improve performance and efficiency. So, and then we have the opportunity. So we have the opportunity to do that. Even sending a video, if you have a treadmill or if somebody records you running, we can look at you moving that way as well. So the sky's the limit as far as a consultation. We can take a look at so many different things. And then also, because I am mobile here in Michigan, is I can go wherever I want. So if it's like, okay, yep, things are going pretty good, but this is still, I can't shake it, then we have the opportunity to meet as well. So the virtual is also convenient because you can be anywhere and we can set up shop and we can chat. And I think a large portion of it too is knowledge, just knowing things about yourself, and have somebody kind of looking can be helpful to help your journey as an athlete, right? So
absolutely. I feel like we can always have a PT in our corner. I've learned so much information that not only helps me, but I can pass on to the athletes that I coach. It's just amazing to be able to have that knowledge to make me better, and also just have better quality of life, right? I mean, if we can be strong and have good functional movements, it's going to keep us moving so much the rest of our lives, right? It's when we stop is when we start having issues.
oh yeah. Well, that's always like the funny things when people are like, my doctor told me not to run. And I was like, well, why? Do you want to run? They're like, well, yeah, I want to keep running. It's like, okay, then let's just get you stronger. So here's that, circling back around to strength and mobility. It's like, yeah, let's get strong so that we can run. Because if you love that, why am I going to take that away from you? Nope, not my job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So is there anything else that you want to share that we've missed? I do have a listener question.
Oh, let's see. We've talked about, I think, because I wrote down a couple of things. I think we've covered a large portion of everything.
Okay.
But also, if there's ever any questions, I am absolutely happy to answer anything. So just send it to Loretta, or you can post it on Instagram, whatever, and we'll get the questions answered.
And what's your Instagram account?
Oh, it's Dr. Liesle Elsey.
Will you spell that
So
for us?
yeah, Dr.Lie. So I should say Dr. Dr. Liesle.ELSEY. So my first name and last name are like a mirror of each other. And yes, I'm married into that.
And her page, she is showing some cool things that she's doing as a mom to be able to use her daily routine with her kids, but yet get in those strengths. So it's a really great opportunity too for some resources if you're out there and you're looking for ideas that you can do at home and make it work within your life schedule as well. Because I think that's the important thing. I mean, as a running coach, I feel like anything that we are doing, whether it's running or strength training or mobility, is consistency is key. And so if we want to get better, we want to get stronger, we need to be consistent. And in order to make it consistent, you need to build it into your life to make it something that works within your life. So I think
100%. Yeah. Makes it's so true. But we just need to hear about 1,600 times in order to be like, oh yeah, that's right.
Yes. So, before we go on this question, I do want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned about climbing for hills and getting stronger. And I think that's really something that is a big piece of our running community. A lot of athletes we coach are in the Midwest. So we're flatlanders, right? But we're running mountain races, so we're, we have to be sometimes creative because we might not have hills, or we might not have the tools or the mountains to climb to get there. But, I've had 2 athletes myself that I've coached to finish the Bigfoot 200. So I'm going to give a shout out to Nicole Diedrich, who just finished Bigfoot 200 this last weekend. She lives in Wisconsin and, was more training in the flatlands, and she crushed it. And we also have Coach Katie O'Connor from Chicago area, and also a flatlander, finished Bigfoot 200. And I had an athlete a couple years ago from Michigan. So, we've had to be creative with applying some of the principles we're talking about today of getting strong and fit to be able to finish these races. So I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but, can you talk a little bit about some good things to do for preparing for hill climbing or mountains, getting your legs strong for that?
Yeah. So going back to like mobility, when we think about running, especially when we're doing like hill stuff, right, a hill is at an angle, and so you have to have the ankle like mobility to be able to tolerate that. If you don't, that's going to put a bit more torque on that Achilles tendon, and if the tendon can't tolerate, then it's going to shoot it up someplace else, so it can go up into the back. So we don't want that. So you can also, and we chat about this before about like, weighted vest stuff. I know you've done weighted vest things.
Yes.
But even when we think about doing like climbing stairs from a functionality, doing something at home, it's like, okay, well, if we were to just do step ups or climb flights of stairs, go to a high school with bleachers and be able to climb. And then if we need that extra load, most certainly we can do that. And then thinking about the power behind it. So one of my other favorite exercises, and I don't know if I've had you do this, Loretta, is to do a high step up, like on an 18-inch box. And then from that step up position, drive that opposite leg forward into the wall, all while your hands are above your head holding a medicine ball.
See, this is the kind of evil plotting she does. I'm trying this though. I haven't tried that.
So that combines the mobility, stability, and strength that we need to be able to power to move our body up, off, like through space. So that's one of my other favorite ones. And we cheat it a lot. So we'll either like use more calf, and we won't use our glute and our hamstring to be able to like extend us and move forward. So that would be probably my favorite. And again, from the functionality of like climbing bleachers.
Right.
We got high schools all around here. If you don't, or if there's a hill. So at Kensington Metro Park here in Michigan, there's Possum Hollow at Kensington. And so that's probably like the steepest hill in the park. And so that's probably the extent of a hill that you're
Yes, yes. Although I mean, in Michigan too, I don't know if you've ever ran Hen Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
No.
it's in my neighborhood. And now that you've tortured me, you're going to have to come visit me and run this hill. Because it's something.
I might be crawling up the hill. So when I went to Adrian College, and Heritage Park is down in Adrian, and they have a hill called Bertha. I'm not sure if that's what it truly is called, or if that's just what the cross country team called it. And so we would do like hill work, and it was like kind of sandy and just, and you're like, okay, here we go. Like,
That's great.
Go.
Isn't it funny how hills get their names? When I was in high school, we had a hill that we called Dead Dog Hill that we ran, but it was because one time we came across a dead dog on it, and that name has still stayed. Like to this day, people still call it Dead Dog.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah. The hills that come along. Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah. So, but I do think doing the step ups has been really helpful in me getting stronger at hills as well. I do use a weighted vest when I'm doing step ups, and I like that because I'm a little bit more hands free. So I can do, some of the movements. But I also, with athletes that don't have those, just like Liesle was saying, there's so many things we can use. We have our hydration packs that we're using, or a backpack that you can put some weight in. And I often, like when people are going to do some of these bigger events like this, I recently had Sarah Krebs finish the 1,200 miles on the Ice Age Trail, those kind of things, we're going to be carrying more supplies with us. So training with some of that too, to get some extra weight. So you're used to that. I think, sometimes the packs are getting up to 12 or 15 pounds that we're carrying because there's so many required pieces that you have to do, like at, let's say, Bigfoot 200 or Tahoe 200, so knowing what you need in your pack, how much weight that's going to be, and doing some of your strength training with that, I think is helpful as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that, early when the kids were younger, we had a hiker for the kids, and like it's hard hiking with a child on your back, but right. Again, from the functionality, you're trying to get some of this training in with family during family time, throw a kid on your back and just go, they'll think it's a blast, right? So it's the fusion of training, getting your self-care in, and then also spending time with the family, right? So trying to find that balance.
Right. That's funny you mentioned that. I was recently out with our friend Kay, and Kay is one of my running friends, and I overheard her saying something to someone that she is doing strength training. She's carrying her 2 kids, all the time, and she told how much they weighed. I'm like, good, she's learning.
Yeah, but it's so true. I mean, if you can, like, from a functionality of like mom life, is, do we, and this is a whole nother tangent, and I'll just say it and just get off my chest here, is like, in the first years, we're straight up surviving motherhood. And then somewhere along the lines, we're like, oh, like, shoot, like I need to do some self-care and take care of myself. If we learn that lesson early on, then it's kind of like, oh, sweet, like I can do self-care and spend time with my family. Like,
right. Dads can do it too, right? Dads can do the same thing. So
yeah,
with the kids on your back.
Yep. Well, that's when you give dad. So, but we have 2 joggers, and so when we had just 3 kids, he took the double and I took the single, and so he would push the heavier ones, and then I would have the single with the lightest one. So I mean, just look kind of like hilarious, kind of like. Here comes the family.
All right. So great ways to incorporate strength, help you get stronger, stay injury prevention, and just help us have better quality of life. So thank you for all of that wisdom. And if anybody wants to book a consultation with Liesle, you can go onto our website, ornerymule.com, Trail Run Coach, and you can get information on that, and you can get that set up. Or if you have any questions, shoot me a message as well. But I do have a listener question, and this is from one of our coaches, Shannon. What do you do to fix knee valgus or the knee drop? Probably due to hip issues.
Yeah. So depending on, it can be foot as well. So it depends on the school of thought. So there's always this nasty thought of like pronation, like don't, like you pronate too much. and maybe there's a possibility that, so then we think about foot intrinsics. So talking about toe yoga to make sure you have good foot intrinsics. Sometimes you need to have a shoe that gives you a bit more support so that from the ground up, you're not collapsing into that valgus. And so if we've cleared out the foot and we have like a smart, responsive foot, then looking up to the hip and seeing, okay, is it that the hip doesn't have that strength that it needs? So one of my favorite exercises is a modified deadlift with like a rotation. So say you're standing on your right foot, and maybe this can be one of the exercises that we put on the
yes, we can add this one too.
YouTube. So say you're sitting on your right foot, doing a toe touch on your left foot. You're going to go into a reach across that right leg, and then you're going to come all the way up. And so we're working on eccentrically, so lengthening those rotators and then having that power to come back up. So making sure that our body, when we think about as the foot hits the ground, we go in through a pronation, which is totally normal. Your foot should pronate because that's just the mechanics of gait. There should be a little bit of that internal rotation, a little bit of that, and I'll say a teensy bit of like a valgus, we'll say for visual context. And then your body should have the ability to propel forward. When we don't have that strength to like slowly control that rotation, that's when we see that like yucky valgus. And so if people don't know what a valgus is, it's going to be like that knee, you kind of like become knock-kneed. Is that a good way to explain that?
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah.
But yeah, so it can be from the foot, but it can also be from the hip too. So hopefully that answers your question. I'm sorry. I feel like I went on a tangent.
No, so that's good. So just going to throw it out there. Would that be a good question to come for a consult? Is that something you could work through with somebody virtually?
Yeah, I mean, because you have to check the mobility of, why is it they're breaking down? And some of it can be their anatomy too. It's like, if you've watched like the marathons on TV, this is what we do for fun at the Elsey household. We watch the New York Marathon. But you can see like some of these elite runners, like if you were just to look at them, you're like, how the world can they run a 2-hour marathon? Like that's just insane. But they have the strength and the ability to control that. So yes, to answer that question, I'm sorry, that was my tangent. I'm so ADD today. You can see, do they have the mobility? Do they have the stability? Do they have strength? And see where they break down, because sometimes it's a relatively quick fix for them to work on. And it can be something, if they can stick to that for a couple of weeks, they could see great improvements. But like you had said before, it's consistency.
Right.
Huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think we really covered it today. So be sure that you're watching our YouTube page. We are going to be getting up some cool videos, and Liesle just told us a new exercise. So I definitely want to get that one in there too. I think it will be a great resource for everyone. Again, if you ever have questions, drop them in our comments. We'll do the best we can to answer them and help you out. So thanks so much for listening today. Like us and follow us on our Facebook pages, on Instagram and Facebook. It's Ornery Mule Coaching. So like us, follow us, share us.
Yeah. And thank you for having me. It's so much fun just chatting. We've had these conversations so often. That's just great to be able to collaborate and kind of work together. So thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for coming. And it's great to be able to share it with our community, because we do spend a lot of time, and I think together we have a lot of wealth that we can, offer and share. And when we collaborate, it makes it even better. So
it does 100%.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Loretta.